Because otherwise, I just want to record us doing some Stannis and Waldorf shit. Is that even their names? One of them's right.
Good evening. This is BoomerRexTonight. We're back.
Hi.
We decided that the easiest way to do the commentary on the article we read to you guys the other day was just replaying the video of me reading it, pausing it, and discussing different points that we want to, get deeper into while I'm reading. So you'll get to see, my beautiful face. Also, if you do like seeing me while we're doing this sort of stuff, please comment below. Let us know so that I know to do more videos of me. And, that way I know what you guys want. So,
And if you listen to this on Podbean, comment there, because fuck those video files.
yeah, fuck those video
Photogenic sons
YouTube
of bitches.
people. Yeah, no, it's fine. All right, so I'm gonna hit play, and we will, like I said, we're
The show will
basically
begin.
we're basically gonna be doing a voiceover to the video we made yesterday.
It's a director's commentary.
Yes, no, that's exactly what it is. This is director's commentary by RisenLadyHeathen
Director
and
RisenLadyHeathen.
Ethel.
And Nitwit.
All right, let's get into it.
I really do like the Morse code.
It is cool.
But I also liked Jericho. The show, not the garbage in the Bible.
Okay, so for those of you who are wondering, that is real Morse code, and it really does say something. So
Yeah, Easter
get
egg
out there
shit
and
eggs.
figure it out. This is an Easter egg for y'all. So go do your thing. It's fun. I think you'll like it. All right. Good evening. I'm RisenLadyHeathen. This is BoomerRexTonight. We have been on hiatus while Mr. BoomerRex continues to recover from surgery, so he will not be present this evening. However, Asshole discovered information that I refused to sit on. I will read the article in question, links in description. This is supposed to be really serious, and I'm sorry, but that sounded so dirty right there. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Description below, and tomorrow we will post a discussion about what's within, what it means, where it could go, what you can do, and who it affects. Let's dig right into our headline. All right. So, this was written by ProPublica. By the way, I did not have the author's name last night because last night I was reading from the raw story version of it, which just said it was by ProPublica. So his name is Brett Murphy. Just so y'all know, I don't want anybody thinking I'm not giving him credit where credit is due. Okay, so this is his article. So I just turned off the recording on the wrong computer.
I think that's going to happen more.
It's good. It's gonna happen a lot. Okay. And it's they called 911 for help, and police used a new junk science to decide if they were liars. Tracy Harper, a deputy police chief from suburban Dayton, Ohio, was hunting for praise. He had a business to promote, a miracle method to determine when 911 callers were actually guilty of the crimes they are reporting. I know what a guilty father, mother, or boyfriend sounds like, he once said. Which is odd for somebody who has no psychology background, has little experience with murder and
Wasn't he a cop
investigation.
for like a million years?
Yeah, but the town he lived in had like one murder a year.
A fair point, though.
And he wasn't involved in those investigations. And we get into that later in the article. But
I'm willing to spot him on expertise in, right, that human has interacted with a number of liars. For better or worse.
For sure. But we also know, and you have the numbers, that cops are not as good as your average human being about telling whether or not somebody's lying by
we never
by a
addressed,
reasonable margin. They're worse at it.
And it's because of how their work makes them interact with the world. Like, they spend most of their time identifiably police, which means people behave towards
differently.
them as police.
Yeah. Which already makes them...
And it makes it impossible for them to zero their actual fucking interactive experience with stuff.
Mhm.
It's why I liked the ideas previously that have been talked about with recruiting bouncers and stuff, people who have experience in security fields, but using soft power.
Right.
Right. That no, you're just gonna leave because you don't want to get banned from this bar for life, bro. That's what it'll be. It'll be forever. Right. If you start throwing hands. So, and it's a felony, right? Once you are asked to leave a bar in most places, if you don't, you have committed a felony. Past tense.
That's true. All right. Harpster tells police and prosecutors around the country that they can do the same. Such linguistic detection is possible, he claims, if you know how to analyze callers' speech patterns, their tone of voice, their pauses, their word choice, even their grammar. And I'm not saying that it isn't possible to potentially do all those things, but you're missing a huge part when you're just listening to someone's voice and how they're talking when they're in an already stressful situation. And that's body language.
Yeah. The overwhelming majority
You're
of communication
already
is
missing
nonverbal.
half of the conversation by
You're
not being able
missing
to see somebody's body language.
Like 60 to 90% is the numbers I've seen.
Oh, okay. I just say,
It's the same reason you can watch foreign language television and
have a general idea of what's
I kind of look. I'm gonna have a hard time explaining why the lady is angry at the dude in the bee suit, but here's kind of what's happened so far.
Right.
Obviously, there's been a birthday party ruined somehow.
Yeah, this dude came in and that made that girl sad, and
Yeah.
then he said something to this person over there, and yeah. Anyway, but so I digress. Stripped of its context, a misplaced word as innocuous as hi or please or somebody can reveal a murderer on the phone. Ooh. So far, researchers have tried to corroborate Harpster's claims have failed. So far, researchers who have tried to corroborate Harpster. I just want to apologize.
7 hours.
This yeah, this is gonna be a long video. But first, I want to apologize for my mess ups throughout reading this. This was an hour and something of me reading, which is why you see the cuts in it. Those cuts are because I needed to take like a break, so we paused it. I smoked a cigarette, fixed my lipstick, and
we talked about some stuff.
Yeah, stretched my arms a bit because I'm holding okay, if you've never held your phone out in front of you at arm's length with your elbow just slightly
Forget all
bent.
that. I've watched human beings get crippled holding out paper towel rolls. Just a little cardboard rolly thing.
Oh yeah.
You can't hold stress positions are my favorite.
Just hold your arm out and just see how long, even with nothing in it. Just see it with your elbow just slightly bent. And
The
tell me
answer
how
is
you
measured
do.
in single-digit minutes.
It's uncomfortable. So anyway,
I'm guessing not an impressive one.
as the video goes on, you'll see me leaning closer and closer because I ended up finding a position where I could rest my arm on the table that the computer was on, so that I wasn't putting the full weight.
Good call. So, since it was the only thing on my second page of notes and I'm worried I'll forget it, later on there's a whole thing about ministers of truth, and I just wanted to laugh derisively at that.
Okay.
So, anyway.
We'll remember, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just want to get it in here in case I forgot it. I wanted to laugh rudely about that. That's the thing a dumb person says. All right.
We're preemptively rudely laughing at that thing. Okay. Harpster's claims have failed. The experts most familiar with his work warn that it shouldn't be used to lock people up. Prosecutors know it's junk science too, but that hasn't stopped some from promoting his methods and even deploying 911 call analytics in court to win convictions. In 2016, Missouri prosecutor Leah Askey wrote Harpster in effusive email, bluntly detailing. I once again apologize for my inability to pronounce some words. It's not that I don't know the word, it's that I don't use it a lot, so it sounds weird. Anyway, so I apologize. How she skirted legal rules to exploit his methods against unwitting defendants. Of course, this line of research is not recognized as a science in our state. Askey wrote, explaining that she had sidestepped hearings that would have been required to assess the method's legitimacy. She said she disguised 911 call analysis in court by getting creative without calling it science. I was confident that if a jury could hear this information and this research, she added, they would be as convinced as I was of the defendant's guilt. What Askey didn't say in her endorsement was this. She had once tried using Harper's methods against Russ Freya, a man wrongfully convicted of killing his wife. At trial, Askey played a recording of Freya's frantic 911 call for the jury and put a dispatch supervisor on the stand to testify that it sounded staged. Lawyers objected, but the judge let the testimony in. Freya was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. After he successfully appealed, Askey prosecuted him again and again called the supervisor to testify about all the reasons she thought Freya was guilty based on his word choice and demeanor during the 911 call. It was Harpster's analytical class, the supervisor said, that taught her to evaluate a call to see what the outcome would be. This judge wouldn't allow her to continue and cut the testimony short. Freya was acquitted. He'd spent 3.5 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. Now, this is what people should really be worried about here, is because this guy got convicted just solely on this 911 operator who happened to take this course from Harpster. And he went to jail for 3 years for a crime he didn't commit because of this.
Oh, yeah. No, and this is going to feed the machine of false confessions that we've already covered. I had confused this with the one where the dude actually did kill his wife, right? Or helped her commit suicide, or some much more complex thing.
Yes, something about drugs, yeah.
Where even, right, for the moment, and I'm not actually saying this, but for this part of the discussion, let us stipulate that all of the analytics argument is true, right? That they can absolutely do this. The problem there is, if you've made any sort of study of the history of the concept of humans and organized justice, all of it has always been, right, the truth tempered by justice, right? Justice is the, right, because truth, who killed who, that's a fairly simple thing.
Right.
Justice is much more complex in terms of, right, does she have a terminal illness, 12 other things, all these mitigating circumstances that are going to cause the, right, questions. So,
right.
Anyway. Even if they had found a magic thing, which I don't believe they have, right, I think it's going to result in a much harder justice than anything anyone's actually sought before, since we were talking eyes for eyes, or the Mongolian legal code, which is not only retributive, it's incredibly stacked with interest. Like, if you kill someone's goat, you got to pay them like 7 goats.
Right.
So.
And there's actually another case that they mention later in this article, that there's a whole another article that the same author wrote also on ProPublica, and I will link to that in the description, and we'll talk more about it later, because that article has more details about that particular case and why it's so insane.
Yeah, it shows you how this infects a case start to finish.
Exactly. It spells it out for you. It gives you some extra details that this particular wide overview doesn't have, even though it is so long and well written. Brett Murphy definitely went above and beyond in all of his research for this, and the ProPublica, if you go to the links, they have all the evidence, they have the sound bites, they explain, they break it down, they show you how it all works. So anyway, we'll talk more about that later, but I just wanted you guys to be sure to check the description for that. I did it again. Fuck. Okay. None of this bothered Harpster, who needed fresh kudos to repackage as marketing material for a chapter in an upcoming book. We don't have to say it was overturned, he told ASCII when soliciting the endorsement. Hook me up. Make it sing. Junk science. So here's problem number one. Okay, this right here should really
1 hour video.
really make y'all worried, because he literally said, we'll just leave out the fact that he got acquitted. It doesn't matter. It's not important. Like, the fact that he wasn't guilty doesn't matter at all.
That's a failure of the legal system.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with what you know, with what we're doing.
Work involved here.
It's fine.
So this is a fine spot for me to throw in my thing, which is at least partly, this is so insidious. I see this as so insidious because, right, for the most part, right, I'm not going to say this is people taking continuing education and training hours, right, just stay current and all the other stuff, right? These are people who genuinely want to be better at this job because this job fucking matters.
And they believe that this helps them do their job.
Right, it's the same as the police who, right, have whatever the newest flavor of interrogation method is, right? That's fine. The problem is the way that training is done drums in the parts that lead to the mistakes. Right. In its syllabus, it'll talk about this is a block, a tool to be used, not a sole thing. Because, yeah, of course, they know, right? They know how the liability game works. Right. They're not about to say, fuck yeah, man, magic shit, find the truth right here, bitches. But they'll say it.
Oh, yeah. No, and one of the things that you're going to find is a continuing theme in this article is how nobody involved in any of this wants to talk to the press. None of them. And this you will see time and time again throughout this article. And there's a reason why they're being so tight-lipped about this. And it's not because they don't believe in it or whatever. It's because they were told, you can't talk about this. It's like Fight Club. Like, you don't talk about Fight Club.
Systematically, the idiots. I will point out the Marine Corps has the right policy on this. The Marine Corps encourages pretty much all of its troops to talk to the press, but it also gives wee babies training on, if you don't know what to say to a fucking, right, do not talk to the press about your fucking problems. It will not fix your problem. It will infinitely make it fucking worse if anyone can figure out who talked.
Mm-hmm.
And thirdly, right, when in doubt, say something nice about your hometown.
Right. Yeah, very simple.
Tell something good about the mission or some experience you've had on it. Like, right, but there's at least a script, a loose form, some idea, because otherwise you're going to be standing there talking to a hot reporter, or at least a human being identifiable in sex based on clothing, which is not, you know, like a common thing for you. And they probably smell good, because you don't. So, woo! And they have lights and big eyes and bigger whatevers, but... And so, yeah, no. Have some sort of thing in mind. This has all of the undertones of, they don't want to talk about it, because I don't think we've actually hit the part where he complains about distribution. Which is where literally my first note is.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into this.
Further
into this. In the justice system is nothing new, but unvarnished correspondence about how prosecutors wield it is hard to come by. It can be next to impossible to see how law enforcement, in league with paid self-styled experts, spreads new, often unproved methods. The system is at its most opaque when prosecutors know evidence is unfit for court, but choose to game the rules, hoping judges and juries will believe it and vote to convict. People like Faria, defense lawyers, and sometimes even judges are blindsided. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else, Faria told me. ASCII now goes by Leah Cheney and is no longer a prosecutor. Did not answer questions about the case other than to say she didn't know about Harpster's work until Faria's first trial. She denied allegations of misconduct in other media interviews. Curious why the name change. Maybe just the last name. So, anyway. I first stumbled on 911 call analysis while reporting on a police department in northern Louisiana. At the time, it didn't sound plausible, even as a one-off gambit, let alone something pervasive that law enforcement nationwide had embraced as legitimate. I was wrong. People who call 911 don't know it, but detectives and prosecutors are listening in, ready to assign guilt based on the words they hear. For the past decade, Harpster has traveled the country quietly sewing this method into the justice system, case by case, city by city, charging up to $3,500 for his 8-hour class, which is typically paid for with tax dollars. Hundreds in law enforcement have brought into the obscure program, and I had a rare opportunity to track in real time how the chief architect was selling it. Harpster makes some astonishing claims in his promotional flyers. He says he has personally consulted in more than 1,500 homicide investigations nationwide. He promises that his training will let 911 operators know if they are talking to a murderer, gives detectives a new way to identify suspects, and arm prosecutors with evidence that they can exploit at trial. The program has little online presence. Searches for 911 call analysis in national court dockets come up virtually empty, too. A public defender in Virginia said, "I've never heard of any of that claptrap in my jurisdiction." Dozens of other defense attorneys had similar reactions. One thought the premise sounded as arbitrary as medieval trials by fire, when those suspected of crimes were judged by how well they could walk over burning coals or hot irons. Could it be? Yeah, that description is just oh my God, true. That face in that pause was bad. It was like
Gary's mod shit
Bucky.
right there. Yeah, you hear me, Gen Zers.
No, what I think we'll do is when we get about halfway through the video, we'll cut it, so we'll do 2 nights, so that we don't have y'all sitting around here for.
So we're gonna do this 1 6-hour video tonight,
yeah,
1 6-hour video tomorrow night.
Because there really is a lot to unpack here, but basically what.
Jay Russell, we're like 6 minutes in.
Yeah, no, we're more than 6 minutes in. We're 10 minutes.
What's our total record time?
8 minutes. Because I hit the pause button.
That's a good point.
Bunch.
Touche.
So the newest time, it's been 8 minutes. Anyway, so we'll split it into 2 parts. But the point here is that they're comparing this to old timey, like, you know, like, she's the witch. Can we burn her? Throw her in the pond, and like.
Well, and each one of these is a step away from trial by combat, where at least at the end, right, half of the people who were disagreeable have shut the fuck up. And I'm not saying it's a good way to find truth or anything else, but it does find fucking peace and tranquility, or at least less active shouting. So, and part of this I have to, like, premise all of it with, right, my bit with the, like, security folks is way more direct defense and direct action than, like, interrogating people. Like, I have taken statements, but that's not where most of my experience lies.
Right.
So, I don't know. I feel for you guys sometimes.
Okay. We're going to back this up a bit so we can get some context, because I fast forwarded because of my weird face. Okay. Searches for 911 call analysis in national court dockets come up virtually empty, too. A public defender in Virginia said, "I've never heard of any of that claptrap in my jurisdiction." Dozens of other defense attorneys had similar reactions. One thought the premise sounded as arbitrary as medieval trials by fire, when those suspected of crimes were judged by how well they could walk over burning coals or hot irons. Could it be true that Harpster, a man with no scientific background and next to no previous homicide investigation experience, had successfully sold the modern equivalent to law enforcement across the U.S. almost without notice?
Yes.
First, I put together a list of agencies that had recently hosted him. In the months that followed, I spent more than 80 open records requests and interviewed some 120 people. Thousands of emails, police reports, and other documents led to a web
That is one of the things I find more
thousands.
concerning, is that how back-channely all of this is.
Yeah.
Right, this isn't like the polygraph, which they appear to have given up trying to get into courts, and thank God.
Yeah.
And I love the
Those are
polygraph, I
bullshit.
love its origin story, but...
Right.
And you can make a polygraph work the way intelligence departments use it. Right? To look for lifestyle changes, and knowing somewhere in the back of your head, a lawsuit's not the worst ending this could have. Right, that they can call people who will grab me, fuck my rights, and take me to a place in the United States and break my fingers or what, right? It only gets worse from here.
Right.
And again, that's looking for changes in the thing. That's 12, right? There is benefit to it. But notice none of those agencies are pushing to have it be admissible in court.
Right.
Right, the same as the brain scan stuff and the new end of it, because there is some, right, there is a potential that we can ask people questions in such a way that they cannot lie.
Right.
And that has some huge Fifth Amendment, Fourth Amendment implications in terms of, if I can prove that you can see that because it's lighting up your spatial awareness because you've been in that murder scene before, and you have no reason to be, it's not like a close family, right, where you've been there a lot.
Right.
That's interesting, but terrifying in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that in this instance, they're no better than psychics. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're sitting there like, I can tell everything from this one phone call that lasted 4 minutes during the most stressful point in somebody's life.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely terrified that they've taken their, right, zero training set data, right, we'll do it like it's computers, on Andy of motherfucking Mayberry, right? They somehow only got those 900 or 100 calls from people who have no background in crime, right? Or security, where you're going to be worried and thinking about, this is the kind of shit that gets scrutinized, right? Even if you're not trying to, like, fuck around and find out, but it was the same part that drove me to get a disposable drug dealer phone when I thought there was a dead homeless guy, because I am not getting caught up in dead homeless guy adventures.
Yeah. No,
I didn't kill him. I'm just saying that's the same guy I saw in the same spot the second day. Somebody ought to go poke him with a stick.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to.
Alright. Back this up a bit for...
I wouldn't, but...
I know you wouldn't. Homicide investigation experience had successfully sold the modern equivalent to law enforcement across the U.S. almost without notice? First, I put together a list of agencies that had recently hosted him. In the months that followed, I spent more than 80 open records requests and interviewed some 120 people. Thousands of emails, police reports, and other documents led to a web of thousands more in new states. When agencies refused to turn over public records, ProPublica's lawyers threatened litigation and, in one case, sued. I followed the paper trail Harpster left as he traveled the country working law enforcement back channels. A story unfolded about a credulous, at times reckless, justice system functioning as an open market for junk science. Those responsible for ensuring honest police work and fair trials, from training boards to the judiciary, have instead helped 911 call analysis metastasize. it became clear that almost no one had bothered to ask even basic questions about the program. Outside of law enforcement circles, Harpster is elusive. He tries to keep his methods secret and doesn't let outsiders sit in on his classes or look at his data. The more civilians who know about it, he told me once, the more who will try to get away with murder.
All right.
In reality,
This one out of my first note. He's not wrong about that. Like, the framing's copply dumb, but again, I don't come out of the Dudley Do-Right side of the house, so I don't know what the fuck's wrong with that. But minimizing attribution is important because at some level, right, think of all the things you know about defeating a polygraph.
right, but
That you just heard and whatever.
yeah, most
Fine.
yeah.
But that's how that shit gets out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That we are careful when we make movies about not showing the right way to make bombs, meth, things like that. Right? That we know that people take information. And so if you start, right, teaching people, right, if people know that this is a thing that's being done, they're going to modify their behavior, thus making the system less useful. He's not wrong about that statement. Right. But
if this was a for real science and not a junk science, I would feel differently about it. But the fact that none of this...
This is what pseudosciences have always hid behind.
Right. And he hasn't allowed any peer review, which needs to happen before something can...
Yeah, we haven't addressed that part yet.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm just saying this is my first note for the 30 minutes we've been recording.
People have been wrongfully accused and convicted of murder after someone misinterpreted their call for help, while those who use 911 call analysis against them face little or no consequences. I documented more than 100 cases in 26 states where Harpster's methods played a pivotal role in arrests, prosecutions, and convictions, likely a fraction of the actual figure. All of it began in an unexpected place. In the winter of 2004, Harpster walked into the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. He was one of dozens of local police officers from around the country who'd been invited to attend a 10-week training course called the National Academy. He listened to a lecture there given by an agent named Susan Adams, who the Bureau had hired in the 80s to teach interview and statement analysis techniques. Harpster was rapt. Then 43, he had spent more of his career with the Morene Police Office, Morene, Ohio Police Department. Morene population 6,500 is an unlikely crucible for a newfangled homicide investigation method, and Harpster is an unlikely figure to be the one who forged it. The city averages less than one murder a year. Harpster had scant involvement in homicide investigations according to his personal file. The file shows a decorated career with commendations for good deeds like volunteering with underprivileged kids and organizing Christmas food and gift drive for a family in need. So this is all wonderful things, and I'm glad he did all those things. And I'm not saying he's a bad person, but kind of sort of he went the bad route. He took a turn, and I don't know.
Or did he do the good capitalist thing and realize that certainly post 9/11, the push for training and other things has led to, right? It's why you can get fucking 1,000 courses on urban combat handgunnery for the various nitwits. None of which is going to say, well, if their ambush worked, you're all dead.
Right.
So... And I get it. That's part of the mentality that we've gone to, and part of why I support reduction in force half of the Marine Corps.
Right.
Because I also worry that it's bleeding over. Right. Here's a thing that he could assemble, right? And that's kind of the problem. Is this is the financial incentive we've put in place is assemble something that looks like a system and sell it back to us. Right, once you've reached your 10,000 hours, and in most states can freely start a security company with minimal paperwork. Loads of dudes go up the chain on handgun instructor, right? Because instructor of instructors looks fucking great on a resume or splashed on a whiteboard.
Right.
But I'm not surprised this is where it went.
Right.
And it's the thing he thought he could use. Like, as you said, I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he set out to create monsters, but neither did fucking Dr. Frankenstein.
Right.
Yet the end of the story is we got a rampaging beast.
Right. And he's doing nothing to stop it.
Yeah. And can't. What's he gonna do? Come out and say my life's work has been bullshit? Oops, I fucked up. I didn't carry the one.
Yeah. Fair.
Right, we were looking at him, right? Bullshit back of the envelope numbers, right? If he's not pulling in more than $600,000, I don't know what the fuck he's doing. And that's after taxes.
Right.
Right, assuming a third goes to taxes.
Right.
And one, that makes, right, if you admit it's all wrong, that's a million, like, civil suits that are gonna happen.
Well, and not only that, but yeah, now...
And you've already conceded the point.
Mm-hmm. Now you've got a lot of people who are going to be coming at you.
And win. Because you said I was wrong.
That's fair. All right. He was once Officer of the Year, and he never took a single sick day. After he left the FBI Academy that winter, Harpster enrolled at the University of Cincinnati to pursue a graduate degree in criminal justice. For his master's thesis, he collected 100 recordings of 911 calls.
And that's my time to drop in a new one.
Oh, jeez. Half of the call. Like, we don't need me making the O face.
No. God.
Shit. Yeah, no. But you know, the fact that he took 100 calls, 50 of them.
I think we just got here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what he was just talking. That's what I was just talking
about.
Fair. But 50 of the calls were people who had committed a crime, not necessarily the crime they called about. It's not specific, so I'm not really sure if you can use that as appropriate. You know, because yeah. People who call 911 might have committed a crime, but most likely not the one they're calling about? Maybe?
I have no idea.
We need more information, right? And there's certainly not enough information in just this piece that he used to, you know, anyway.
For his target group, probably. Right, that's probably what we're actually seeing and responding to in terms of what the fuck. Because this, right, on its face, this is not an inherently stupid concept.
No.
Right? The same way as, yes, I believe technically you can, in theory, create a non-biased AI, but love to see someone do it, because I agree, the steps seem real fuck-off simple, like brownie level simple, and we haven't so far. And so, yeah, I have no doubt that in the zip code, right, he's used to patrolling in Ohio, or wherever he got his 911 calls from. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good read on those people in that time frame. Right? And right, I'm willing to, like, stipulate. Sure, let's say it was a good idea and he accurately did it for this data set. I don't think that's what happened, but if it could be done,
right,
then that might be accurate for that zip code at that time. And the problem is, if you're holding that up as the fucking Polaroid to judge by, right?
For all
Spot 12 differences between these photos. Yeah. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no. It's no bueno.
And Officer of the Year seems like scraping the bottom of the barrel for accolades. But, again, this is.
Once.
This is entirely the fucking weird intersection I have with law enforcement.
Like, I could see that being a big thing if it happened, like, a bunch. You know what I mean? Like getting Employee of the Month, like, repeatedly looks better than,
well,
like, yeah, I got it that one time.
Coming out of government security into private security. My whole job is to violate your civil rights and have you walk away spending the rest of your day talking about, I met the nicest security guy. No, he came jogging over like my time was important, whipped off his sunglasses and said, yes, ma'am, how may I help you, or sir? Right. And I got you the fuck out of there without you looking at anything and whatever. Or negative things where, closest thing I've seen in a movie, going to a stalker's house and like pushing him around a little bit and then throwing him in the shower with a pack of dye and being like, scrub it on or I kick the shit out of you. And I really break things, internal things that won't ever heal, bro.
Right.
Because right now, who the fuck are you gonna tell? Some dude came in my house and smacked me around and your story sounds insane, bro. So.
Yeah. No, I get you.
There's this weird intersection of, I get he's trying to, at best, build a Dudley Do-Right system that'll help find, because some of them are, like, their premise is not wrong. Loads of times when someone is calling and saying, my husband or wife is dead, they had some involvement in it, right? That what they're doing isn't wrong. It comes out of that competent place of the truth lies somewhere in the average of the stories.
Right.
And all they're trying to do is get an the earliest read from this bit that they really don't have a lot of use for.
Right.
Right, that up until now, they've mostly treated 911 calls as useless because they are. Eyewitnesses are stupid. Most of them are on something. Right? Like, and I'm not saying good or bad, but
right.
Something that if you had to argue, they're on a drug that has an effect.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone the millions of studies that show people are barely aware of the shit that happens around them.
Right.
So.
Had been found guilty of something, and the other half hadn't. Harpster believed that he could analyze these calls for clues. In his thesis acknowledgments, he said he wouldn't have started the project without Adams, the best teacher I've ever had. Based on patterns he heard in the tapes, Harpster said he was able to identify certain indicators that correlated with guilt and others with innocence. For instance, in response to a dispatcher's question, is an indicator of guilt in Harpster's system. So is an isolated please. He identified 20 such indicators and then counted how often they appeared in his sample of guilty calls. Using that same sample of recordings, Harpster, Adams, and an FBI behavioral scientist named John Jarvis set out to publish a study in 2008. But even before their work was published in a peer-reviewed journal as an exploratory analysis, a common qualifier meant to invite more research, police departments around the...
Sure. I think the FBI may be the entanglement here.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that the FBI human... Yeah, I have little trouble believing that, one, way more criminals who did the crimes are who's calling the FBI.
Oh, for sure.
Because federal level crimes, you're not... Right, that's not the kind of thing you can dissolve in a bathtub or, right, at-home totes. Like, this is not a normal, like, Ohio-level murder problem.
Right.
So... I wouldn't be surprised if that's where a big chunk of the push came from. Because, yeah, right, anyone who interacts, right, a third of people who interact with federal law enforcement could well be criminals of one flavor or another.
I could see that, yeah.
So, I could see that being the big push for the changeover. Because, again, I don't actually think he set out to do something diabolical.
No, I think that he honestly felt like he was onto something. But I also feel like when he realized... maybe not. Instead of reworking it or looking at new calls or, taking a completely different set of calls and setting his whatevers against it and seeing if it still worked or, whatever. And again, 100 calls is nothing for 911 calls. That's a drop in the fucking bucket. You're barely touching anything. And it really comes down to, how just ridiculous this whole thing is, and the fact that he could have pulled back and said, I need to look at this more, when he had the first conviction overturned and said, maybe I should look at this because maybe I'm wrong. But he instead went the other direction and went whole hog on it.
Which is exactly what we would expect based on the previous studies we've got on what. Wonderful story. I'll see if I can't find it quickly. But short version is a cop goes and gets a degree in sociology, and then comes back with the sociology tools he used and used them on his police department, right, his local department, and discovered that, yeah, of course, right, that we highly incentivize simply putting humans in cages.
Right.
Right, and I'm not talking jail or anything else. I'm saying police on a daily, right? It's about how many people they can bring in.
Yeah.
Right, or tickets they can write or whatever, but all of the incentives are on the do their part of the job thing.
Right.
And I think that has corrupted this, right, of whatever good there could have been in this. Because a lot of this seems to be, they're trying to, what is it when they call manufacture inevitable discovery? But, right, which is how you get around fruit of the poison tree. This is them trying to rebuild the polygraph in a way that someone might either pretend it's real science, or we won't have to address that sciencey bit, and you can't do both those fucking things.
Right. The country learned about it. That's because the FBI sent a version of the study directly to them in a bulletin, which was not labeled exploratory. It included contact information for Harpster and Adams.
Exploratory.
The publication, which the Bureau says typically has a readership of 200,000, but is not supposed to be an endorsement, had immediate impact. It was required reading by our detective and communications personnel, a police chief in Illinois told Harpster.
That's fucking problematic if communications personnel means 911 callers or operators. Because I would rather send 911 operators to improv classes,
right,
and to, right, I don't know what the fuck we call MacGyver courses anymore, but something like that,
right.
Because I want them to have zero fucking interest in the criminal justice aspects of this. Someone called 911. They need someone who knows more than them about how to find the wet wall in a building, I don't fucking know.
Right.
But, right, so structural engineering well before we're into, right, light interrogation and intelligence gathering.
No, I think they're better off, focusing on psychology even before you even consider anything like this. And again, with something that was so new, had never even been applied except in 100 cases, with no details about what sort of crimes the other half of this...
Not even applied in, just used 100 incidents as training data.
Right, and it said that they, were guilty of something.
Yeah.
No specificity of...
Yeah.
If it even was related to the 911 call.
The law enforcement side of this isn't interested in which crime either.
Right.
Right. See, again, my earlier statement on, I'm going to violate your civil rights, but I also know the customer service aspect of it where, you're going to tell everyone about me today because I was so nice and so helpful.
Right.
That's what worked fastest.
Oh, yeah. It always is.
Well, and without the authority to hit you with sticks and things... Of course that's where you're going to start, because, my boss isn't going to have a problem if I kick the shit out of someone who was on, location or whatever. Right, he's going to care about, how the fuck did you get caught?
Right. A sheriff's sergeant in Colorado also read the FBI bulletin and weeks later asked Adams to analyze a 911 tape from a widow suspected of killing her husband. She and Harpster wrote a report of their findings. The widow said the word blood, for example, and that's a guilty indicator. Bleeding, however, is not. She said somebody at different points, which shows a lack of commitment. Witnesses to a crime scene could be able to report their observations. Witnesses to a crime scene should be able to report their observations clearly, Harpster said. Harpster's and Adams wrote, which we know is not true.
Oh, consciousness of guilt is absolutely true.
No.
Fine.
What I was
yes.
just saying about, a person who is, on the scene should be able to give you a detailed,
and that's about to be taken
description
apart in detail.
And that's just not, it's just not.
Well, this is where, so, again, without hopefully saying anything that can get me sued, I think we're right at the point, we're about to hear the part where this breaks in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Is we're about to hear the bit where someone tries to recreate it. So I'm going to be quiet until the end of that.
Okay. She was inappropriately polite because she said, "I'm sorry and thank you." She interrupted herself, which wastes valuable time and may add confusion. She tried to divert attention by saying, "God, who could do this?" Harpster and Adams commented, "This is a curious and unexpected question." Not really. No, I would say no. There's plenty of things that I could see that being a reasonable thing to say, and one of them is finding my husband's dead body. Yeah, I would be pretty disturbed. Maybe it's just me. Report became part of the police record, along with a significant amount of other evidence, and the prosecutor, Rich Tuttle, echoed their findings during trial. The widow was convicted of murder. Tuttle recently told me that he did not directly use 911 call analysis during trial because no witnesses testified about it. But Tuttle once emailed Harpster about the impact his methods had. "We found your evaluation of the 911 call in this matter to be extremely
scientific and repeatable
and helpful to our investigation and prosecution of the case," Tuttle wrote. The seeds were planted. For more than 12 years, the nation's premier law enforcement agency helped 911 call analysis grow unabated. FBI officials at a charity fundraiser have even auctioned a copy of the book Harpster and Adams wrote about it. Wait, hold on. I read that weird. FBI officials at a charity fundraiser have even auctioned a copy of the book Harpster and Adams wrote about it. That sounds... Harpster says he has presented his material at the FBI National Academy. He frequently trades on the FBI name, and others cite the affiliation when spreading word about 911 call analysis. Then, in a 2020 study, experts from the Bureau's Behavioral Analysis Unit finally tried to see whether the methods had any actual merit. They tested Harpster's guilty indicators against a sample of emergency calls, mostly from military bases, to try to replicate what they called groundbreaking 911 call analysis research. Instead, they ended up warning against using that research to bring actual cases. The indicators were so inconsistent, the expert says, that some went in the opposite direction of what they previously found. This fall, a separate group of FBI experts in the same unit tested Harpster's model at this time in missing child cases. Again, their findings contradicted his so much that they said applying 911 call analysis in real life may exacerbate bias.
So, my two nice things about the FBI. One, the behavioral division is among some of the most interesting law enforcement types and concepts there are.
Mm-hmm.
Largely it plays into the second thing, or on the second thing. Probably the first thing I like about the FBI. Their trick is they never forget anything.
Fair.
That they just have files and files, and if you are doing crimes long enough that the FBI gives shits about, they'll have enough.
Fair.
And that's the same thing the behavioral kids do. I disagree because partly it's the ones who got out and wrote books and stuff and popularized it, so it's on primetime television, where, again, serial killers aren't interesting, they're intricate.
Right.
But, that aside, the kidnapping one, that's a good micro focus. right? Because kids are only kidnapped by people that know them. Stranger kidnapping effectively doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Um,
So I could see it being more likely that one of the 911
yeah,
callers
the
could
fact
be
that it didn't
guilty.
work
Yeah.
there is less helpful. But
And the base. You got people who understand in an emergency situation they need to give X amount of information in this period of time. It needs to be fast. They need to get to the point, and they still couldn't make it work.
everyone I know military adjacent cannot wait to teach you something, and a lot of that has to do with the reporting of stuff. And so, yeah, like when you're calling 911, they need to know what's going on. So, because a lot of that, if nothing else, is to break scripts for using regular phones, which is to say, "Hi, my name is this and such," and then explain your problem. Because again, if you have a legitimate reason to call someone, you should always start out with an introduction. It's just polite.
No, and here's the thing. Like, the first thing you're going to say when you call somebody on a phone, or at least me and, like, all the people I know, is hi, or hello, or hey, blah, 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 blah. Here's the problem. You know what I mean? And sometimes when people are stressed out, they're going to be polite. Because they want help.
I don't care about that. But right, that when they tried it on a group of people who should have a better than average response to reporting accurate information, in minimal words, they didn't find It's the same reason that there is no science behind cell phones causing cancer, because we have studied that long enough that if there were, we would have seen a more consistent and line of, we should look harder at that. And that's not what we find.
No.
So we find it excites sugars. Which, potentially, if you squint and had an infinitely bigger power source that was inside you, all things that your cell phone probably shouldn't fucking be. I'd be much more worried about the Wi-Fi underwear that vibrates and whatever.
Yeah.
So,
anyway.
We digress.
Academic researchers at Villanova
and
and James
clearly reporting, ha ha ha.
Madison universities have come to similar conclusions. Every study, 5 in total, clashed with Harpsters. The verdict: there was no scientific evidence that 911 call analysis worked. The FBI, which declined to comment for this article, published some of the dissent in another law enforcement bulletin, but the reversal has gone largely unnoticed. John Bailey, a police sergeant in Pennsylvania, was among the first to tap Harpster and Adams for help and learning about their technique from the FBI.
Look at you.
Yeah, that's
it's not awesome.
Face.
So, I think that's part of the infectious cycle of police know they can lie, and that wonderful scene from Homicide and wherever it really happened of using here's the wire anyway of using a scanner as a lie detector. Yeah, because if you know the order of the questions you're asking, you can make sure that one's accurate. And accuses them on the other one. Because a lot of it's just push on them, see what happens. You're going to have to go in there and talk to them, and the faster this happens, the better. So everything about modern interrogation tactics, when we were looking at the false confession thing, you could see how this system could be used well. If effectively treated as having an infinite timeline for, we're just going to talk a million times, bro. Because at some level, when they talk about good police work solved this, that's what that is. He's re-interviewing people and all the rest and catching the ones who did it on a day when they're feeling bad or when someone's angry at them. And it's like, yeah, no, they totally did it. So, not some magical formula, which is what this ends up promising to be, or seems to, in the way it's being used. And that's all I got.
This is my angry school marm face, for those of you who are
something gross.
Wondering.
Turns out you smelled the milk and it is bad.
It is very bad. Okay. He believed in it so much that he planned to have Harpster testify in front of a grand jury. That didn't ultimately happen. I recently called Bailey, now a judge, to ask if he knew about the FBI's more recent studies undercutting the work it had once promoted. He did not. This is how it originated at the FBI Academy, he said. You're telling me that makes me scratch my head. Jarvis, one of the original co-authors from the FBI, told me he hasn't spoken to Harpster since they published their study. He said he advised Harpster and Adams at the time that more research needed to back up what they'd found. Jarvis said he was uncomfortable with the methods used in real cases. He was even more surprised that the prosecutors have brought in. He was even more surprised that prosecutors have bought in. I don't see where that work rises to the level of success by the scientific community, he said. There's no definitive answer as to whether this is useful. Adams left the Bureau and is now a private communications consultant. She recently wrote me an email defending Harpster and their work together. As proof of Harpster's qualifications, Adams cited all the times he has been invited to speak about the program and claimed they've analyzed hundreds of 911 tapes. No single indicator can be used to determine the likelihood of innocence or guilt, Adams said. Instead, our study examined indicators in combination, just as 911 call analysis should be used in combination with case factors to uncover the truth. But the more records I saw, the less true that seemed. It was easy to miss a decades-old mystery solved by local police that made national headlines for a day before vanishing into the recesses of the internet. It's the type of story that goes on to inspire true crime shows, always with a neat, satisfying ending, and the FBI was right in the middle of it. This spring, U.S. Marshals followed Jane Benning, a 48-year-old mother of three with jet black hair, as she picked up her youngest son from school in Austin, Texas. Benning sold vintage clothing in town, drove a red 1969 Camaro, owned a menagerie of rescue pets. After she left the school's parking lot, the marshals pulled her over, told her she was under arrest for a murder that happened 26 years ago. In the small hours of January 4th, 1996, Benning twice called 911 and said a burglar broke into her Santa Ana, California apartment, stabbed her boyfriend to death, and slashed her hand before running off into the night. A neighbor reported that they had seen someone fleeing the area at the time, but officers didn't find a murder weapon, and the case went cold. Years went by. Benning moved states and started a family. After Benning's arrest this year, the Santa Ana Police Department posted an Instagram video of officers in suits walking a handcuffed Benning through a parking garage. The post included a vague statement. A cold case detective named Michael Gibbons had solved the murder. After receiving an anonymous letter, he conducted extensive follow-up and consulted forensic experts, the department said. Benning, who has pled not guilty, sent her kid to live with her grandmother part-time while headlines circulated about the mother's arrest. The police department and the district attorney's office haven't explained who those experts are or what evidence Gibbons had discovered. Gibbons and the agencies did not respond to interview requests, and the agencies refused to release records I asked for. But Gibbons told someone. Days after the arrest, he sent an email to Harpster thanking him for analyzing Benning's 911 calls. It significantly helped our district attorney to realize the indicators of guilt in the phone calls, Gibbons wrote, as well as suggestions on how to introduce the 911 calls to the jury during trial. He alluded to other forensic experts, but said Harpster's consultation wasn't instrumental in swaying the prosecutor to file charges. Gibbons said he
Stick with the story that it's a scientific endeavor as opposed to the thing we use to talk prosecutors or whoever into believing us.
Right, and again, like, there's no reason to believe that this woman killed her husband.
Except 80% of, like, crime victims know they're...
No, but, like, she said, like, a burglar came in and blah, 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 and
That's
then
the
a
fucking
neighbor
whodunit that is
said,
not getting
yeah,
solved. That's cool.
I saw a dude running through the woods, so, like, what more do you need? Like...
So then we'll bang on this part with the... Also, it comes for cops at the worst time, right? That case is never getting fucking solved.
No, sometimes you just gotta let them go. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I hate to say it,
Cool, but that's not good for their careers. I
didn't choose to be a cop. You did. Like, sounds like a you problem.
True, but at this point, since I think they're fighting off Nazis with a stick...
Yeah,
like,
fair.
Again, it's like when Boomer gets into the... Right. Well, we'll see how that goes. Like, yeah, we will. Strapped into the same fucking roller coaster.
Yeah. All together.
Oh, great. Right, we're going to go off on their side of the track so they get crushed first. Yes, excellent. My last half a second of enjoyment will be watching them get cheese grated away.
Mm.
Right before I get cheese grated away.
Right.
And then we're just sort of mixed together as a fine Parmesan. Sad.
Fine Parmesan. Sad. Oh my god. I love it.
Sorry.
No.
But that's because there are going to be several of these throughout the thing that you look at and go, this is drifting out of, right? The praise for it isn't about its scientific accuracy or, right? It's that it helps make my job easier, which, okay, cool, but since there's no penalty for being wrong,
Right.
that's not maybe a great way of looking at it.
No. Not even a little bit.
And I don't think there's a good way to make there be much of a penalty for being wrong outside of the really gross negligence that we've already kind of covered. Right? In terms of, like, not turning stuff over and things like that, because...
Right, but because, and we're gonna get into how they squeak this stuff into the courtroom, which is, I think what we're gonna get into next anyway, so. He didn't just find out about Harpster by chance. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit recommended him. Gibbons' email came 2 years after the Bureau's own experts in that same division first publicly warned law enforcement not to use 911 call analysis in actual cases. Junk science can catch fire in the legal system once so-called experts are allowed to take the stand in a single trial. Prosecutors and judges in future cases cite the previous appearance as precedent. But 911 call analysis was vexing because it didn't look like Harpster had ever actually testified. In 2009, Harpster learned about a double homicide in Woodbury County, Iowa, from a television documentary. He offered his services to the lead detective, saying he knew the defendant was guilty solely upon his analysis of the defendant's 911 call. An assistant prosecutor for the county, Jill Estevez, noted later in an email, Estevez's office bought it. Prosecutors there tapped Harpster to consult and testify as an expert on a different case soon after. Emails show Harpster said he had a better idea. In surprisingly blunt language, Estevez spelled out her interpretation. He knows there will be a great legal hurdle getting the research admitted, she wrote in an email to a colleague in another county, who also wanted Harpster to testify. He doesn't want a legal precedent prohibiting the administration of his research. Earlier in 2009, a judge in Alabama had blocked Harpster from taking the stand because there were no other studies supporting his work. So instead of testifying himself, Harpster began to teach others how to analyze 911 calls. His pupils are prosecutors, detectives, coroners, and dispatchers. They are now the ambassadors who could present his work in court while Harpster himself is insulated from scrutiny. No cross-examination when you lecture, Estevez quipped. When I asked, this is the part where I feel he's going to the dark side, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's already been to, 3 different, groups have tried to, repeat his success.
Yeah.
And failed. And said, this is bad, don't touch it, this is not good, leave it alone, blah, blah, blah. And he's continuing to push and say, no, it's fine. It's not the whole thing. It's just a small part. You need to use it as a little thing, and then you can get more information from people using this. But instead, it's being used like the false confessions.
Yeah.
Where, no, now it's flat out
it's
being
narrowing
used to
the
just
focus
put
of their
people in jail.
investigation early. It gives too many false positives that are going to lead to a presumption of guilt that we already know is the death of good police work.
Yep.
Or good investigative work. Let's not conflate the two.
Oh shit, I just saw my face.
A shitty way.
So bad. BoomerRexTonight.
Yeah, that's what happens when Risen gets a wish.
Oh, God. To Estevez about this, she didn't respond, but a colleague in her office, Mark Campbell, defended 911 call analysis. Tracy Harpster's work in analyzing 911 calls is new, he wrote in an email, but the needs for attorneys, judges, and juries to evaluate what witnesses say to determine their credibility is as old as the trial court system. Campbell said he didn't know of other studies in the field, but said he didn't know... Try again. Campbell said he didn't know of other studies in the field, but that wasn't relevant because much of 911 call analysis is similar to exercising common sense, no different than what attorneys and judges have been pointing out since witnesses have been used. As Adams faded into the background, Harpster took their work on tour from Florida to Alaska, university lecture halls, and international homicide conferences, police academics.
The FBI recommending it is not awesome. On the other hand,
well, recommending it before it was peer reviewed and not saying this is an exploratory thing we're looking into.
Oh, yeah. But then there's a new one where it was also referred by FBI behavioralists, and I'm torn on that one because, again, potential is a useful tool, and all the other phrases that they get dropped in more and more frequently as it looks less and less functional.
Yeah.
About this should be part of an investigation, and, using other case factors, and loads of the noises you make when you're kind of building a system to flip it back on the individual detectives and officers that use this, and...
Right. Separating yourself from blame, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's a short enough course, then run the jury through it and let the jury hear the 911 call and they can make up their own mind. But, again, I think this system is flawed fundamentally. But, my original point being, the FBI recommending it, I want a divergent, viewpoint set in my FBI agents, so at some level, I don't mind them recommending, there's a thing, it's got these problems, but look into that, see what you think. But we're back to how systematic are the problems. Because random pleases, I have no trouble picturing a 911 call with a, random please dropped in non-conversationally. That probably is telling. That doesn't make all pleases telling.
No, and
You can't boil it down to a fucking Cosmo or
and
17
it specifically
questionnaire.
says an isolated please.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you mean by isolated please?
You
Is
can
it a blank
absolutely
thing in the
picture it, though.
conversation where somebody says, please?
Can you not? That's what I'm saying.
You
You
know what
can
I mean?
imagine the bad kind, right?
Because like they're waiting for help or something, or are they responding to something the 911 operator said or something someone else said, or
That seems like a complex way to imagine the bad kind. So, yeah, because imagining the innocent kind is fucking trivial, and therein lies the problem. So, I don't believe anyone has a good enough read on whatever, and I think this plays into the, like, police officers' belief that, like, their experience is transferable.
well, and like the fact that saying bleeding or blood,
Yeah.
like blood makes you guilty, bleeding you're innocent. Like I just think that
I think those were the filler ones. Again, I think this is more an idiot's guide to consciousness of guilt. Right, that, yeah, I'm sure the ones who did kill the person they're calling 911 for, right, have a tendency to make that noise. I don't think that means everyone who makes that noise.
But that's my point. Yeah,
Yes.
you can't make these broad statements or these broad assumptions.
No, that's why consciousness of guilt, when proved in court, is infinitely more fucking complex.
Fair.
So, no, this is the problem, and again, I've met entirely too many kids from the legal side of the house, right, like with badges and shit, who think that their interpretation means fuck all, right? And I don't know if they know they're not in charge of most of this. So,
right,
it feeds into the most narcissistic parts and the most lost in the damn parts. Because again, right, rando ran in, killed my whoever, and cut me. That fuck, man, unless we find a dude gibbering at 7-Eleven with a straight razor, we are fucked.
Yeah, there's just no
People
way.
are going to ask us about this case until we fucking die.
Yeah. There's just nothing you can do.
No, but, yeah, except you're going to get punished for not doing it. Yeah, but they do have to make, like, money and get promoted so they don't have such a shit job that they end up going, meh. How about I just be the head of organized crime in my town?
Well, but I also feel like, putting too much stress on officers to, well, like that case. There's never going to be an answer to that case. You know what I mean? And to just blame it on the wife because she was the easy target at the time is just lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that a case that you have, run all the leads, you talked to all the people, you did all the stuff, and you found nothing, sometimes that's okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not okay, but like, you cannot solve every case. It's just not conceivable.
Not without doing the other things we're not comfortable with.
Hanging this type of stuff on people, you know what I mean, is just inappropriate. I think we expect too much of officers, and people need to calm the fuck down. Like, sometimes your loved one just got fucking murdered by a stranger, and that just fucking sucks, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
Like, we did all of the stuff.
Yeah, you fall
never
into
gonna
the 20% of don't know your attacker, and that means you're probably fucked.
It's just like those horror stories that we did when we first started this show for Halloween, when we were talking about, some of those were just never solved, you know what I mean? And they're never gonna be solved.
And part of this feeds into our problem of using horror stories as morality tales. As we get bigger and faster communication networks, we're applying folklore effectively to larger population sets.
Right, and people expect more results from officers instead of understanding that there is always going to be some cases that just, you never know the truth.
Yes.
It's just not going to happen. Unless somebody walks up to you and says, I did it. For sure, it was me.
Or you say fuck it and
Take me
throw the
now.
switch and we live for real, not fucking around in 1984.
Right.
Right, because I have little doubt that turning an AI loose on all of the cell phone calls and tower data, I can find randos now.
Yeah, fair.
Right, unless they're smart enough to not leave their cell phone, which, Jesus shit, we have to have special classes for military kids about. Yeah, you probably can't. I can't imagine letting people bring their cell phones and not just demonstrating. We just kill every cell phone signal. So sure, turn on your fucking cell phone if you want, but a Reaper drone gonna fuck you up.
Fair.
And not even have to ask an adult.
Right. and statewide coroners seminars. The extended curriculum is 2-day, 16-hour course that includes basic and advanced training. Harpster has a motto he likes
I wouldn't
to
believe it
say
was safe
during
to hand
his
a human
lecture.
being a firearm and ask him to take a door after 2 days of training.
Right, and my firearm safety class was 3 hours, I think.
Okay.
I fired a gun for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. So no, if you took that same amount of time in any of the direct action side of stuff, no one would think you were fucking trained on shit.
Right.
Like, cool, you've got an idea. If everyone else who's ever done it more than you is bleeding from a head wound, I guess you can try. And that's not what we're doing with this.
Right.
And the problem is, unlike gunplay or, hitting people with the batons, this has the potential to change the entire direction, right? I would rather they just, collapsible batoned this mom into confessing. Because that one is so much easier, and they probably have more training in it.
Fair.
Not the using it for confessions part, but, where not to hit the humans to break either the human or your baton.
Yeah.
And, again, that damage would be much minimal as compared to having now started with a presumption of guilt, right? Or triggered their presumption of guilt.
Right.
Because this is the problem when you, oh, what's that garbage thing idiots always say that they made House say all the time? About not being coincidences and everyone lies. True
There's
enough.
no such thing as coincidences and everyone lies.
Yeah. The problem is people hear that and they think that's true, or a thing that anyone who's not an idiot says. Because life is made of coincidences.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone lies is incredibly too shorthanded. Right? Again, it's the jaded cop thing.
Then it's the whole concept of correlation is not causation.
Yeah. No, but we learn the right patterns of things. Police are not wrong to assume that, is a married person dead? Alright, well, let's start with the person they're married to.
Oh, of course.
That's the person who has the
You have
reason
to
to
rule
hate
that
them the
person
most.
out, but I assumed they did that 26 years ago.
Then herein lies the oof.
Yeah.
But
anyways, police have but one master, the truth.
nah,
A detective from Wisconsin told him that he'd
derisive
hung
laugh.
the
Wish that
slogan
was true.
up on his office wall.
I wish it could be
In
true
cl-
or that we cared. Because, again, we don't.
No.
You can see based on the budgetary stuff and the thing that's going to come up later. So,
Class, there's a projector screen with the course title, Is This Caller the Killer? The blood red font looks like dripping blood. He walks
Yeah, I don't care about the
attendees
font.
through the indicators of guilt on the checklist that he and Adams invented called the COPS scale for considering offender probability in statements. It's a one package worksheet that they copyrighted. COPS scale don't lie, Harpster has told his students. Boys do.
again, notice it's got a short little thing. The font thing I find dumb just because I've been through a lot of the training slideshows, and sure, some people make bad ones. Again, that part of my vibe on all this is, you ever watched a mystery or listened to a crime thing with somebody who went off in some fucking harebrained direction?
Right.
Just missed a turn somewhere. And so, all their work is in this weird corner of, what the fuck? No, it couldn't have been the dog walker. Didn't you hear they were out of town?
Right.
And this has kind of that same feeling, is it opens your mind to the conspiratorial side of, well, if I can tell a story of how they did it, that's nearly the same thing. And oh Jesus shit, no man, that is not the same as knowing what happened.
Right.
And we know the war on drugs damaged most homicide divisions' ability to read a room.
Right. So Brett Murphy and ProPublica were able to get a hold of one of these sheets.
Oh yeah.
So and it's in the other article, which is in the link in the description. It's called "How Jessica Logan's Call for Help Became Evidence Against Her," also by Brett Murphy, as I said. And if you read through this article, it shows you, you can listen to the 911 call and the different parts that they pick apart, and why they pick it apart, and then you can listen for yourself and decide, like, if you think that, they're being whatever or blah blah blah. But they also have received a copy of the actual paper, the 911 cop scale, and it is literally one page, which I don't think is appropriate. But it has innocent indicators on the left. It has guilty indicators on the right. So it's got questions about who is the call about, what is the call about, and how is the call made. And then at the bottom, it has additional guilty indicators. The innocent indicators under who is the call about is immediate plea for help from victim, immediate assessment of victim, focus on victim, no acceptance of death, aid provided to victim. So all those things, automatically innocent. Guilty indicators are no immediate plea for help for victim, no immediate assessment of victim, focus on caller, acceptance of victim's death, no aid provided to victim. I think it depends on the scenario, and this is the problem, because sure, I could see this potentially working with some certain calls under certain conditions, but you cannot blanket statement this for everything, and it's just so short, and there's so little here, and there's so many other things that could be happening. And the next section is, what is the call about? And the innocent indicators are relevant information, sensory details, prioritizing order, bleeding comments, and guilty indicators are extraneous information, lack of sensory details, inappropriate order, blood/brains comments. And then how is the call made under innocent is urgency, fear for caller's safety, proximity to victim, initial sounds or comments, addressing/coaching the victim, aggressive demands, cooperation with dispatcher. Guilty indicators: no urgency, no fear for caller safety, no proximity to victim, initial delays, insults or blames victim. Passive defenses, and under that it has defendant mentality, mental miscues, ingratiating remarks and minimizes, and then resistance to dispatcher is considered dispatcher confusion, evasion, hang-ups, pauses, repetition, short answers, equivocation, only answer what's asked, self-interruption, unintelligible comments. And then additional guilty indicators are attempts to convince, isolated pleas, awkward phrases, lack of contractions. That's what it says, lack of contractions.
Yeah, but it means, right, should not versus shouldn't.
That's so weird.
It's early on alibi shit.
Conflicting facts, no modulation, factor. It literally says in quotes and then factor after it. I don't know in quotes. And unexplained knowledge. Now, again, I could see how some of those, sure.
Well, it's totally building on the previous. I think it was the Wicklander, one of them. One of the earlier systems police were taught for interrogations really heavily leaned on the people are so busy lying they can't think of the contraction for words. And maybe if it's their first crime, like, again, they're trying to boil down things that we would normally call gut into PowerPoints and other stuff that they're going to slide into pseudoscience more easily just in that construction.
Right. But again, I can see
those are all good things to look for, but
this cannot be the end all be all. One fucking page is not how you deal with something like
then
this.
Just build a real ass pachinko machine.
You'd probably come up with the right answer more often than not. I can make
sure at the bottom few enough of the squares say guilty that sure, fuck it. At least then I know how much we're fucking up by for sure.
Yeah. No, a pachinko machine is the perfect, comparison to this, because that's literally what you're doing.
Every one of those I've seen or done at various times.
In stressful situations or not stressful situations, Like, maybe that's just my idiosyncrasy of how I talk, or how, how I was raised, or where I live, or do you know what I mean? There's so many indicators, so many factors. It's just crazy. All right, let's get a few more minutes of this in. Then the students listened to real 911 tapes, marking indicators on the sheet as they go. He displays 2 opinions on the screen, also in bold red font: guilty or innocent. Figuring out what his students went on to do with the training took some reverse engineering. There's no list of 911 call analysis appearances and no way to easily search local court records. Police departments don't track it either, but Harpster does. Former students send him endorsements describing how they've used 911 call analysis in real cases. Then he repurposes those as marketing material when emailing
that's our
law
design
enforcement
feedback loop.
Right. Yeah. In other cities and states, it's a feedback loop. In emails, Harpster pitches both the curriculum and himself. This training is unique and nobody else is doing it. He told a local police training board in Illinois, because I'm the only one who has done the research.
Part of this is just the hucksterism of, right, the new pros from Dover of whatever flavor. Right? The guys that have a new way of clearing a doorway have the same sales pitch. So, I'm less worried about that, other than this is a terrible way to look for new training courses.
Right.
But we've always had this problem, right? The story I can think of off the top of my head from the military side of it is the Special Forces having a horrible time explaining to people why sending their kids to the Army's mule packing class was worthwhile, because pretty much that works for all of the beasts of burden shaped like mules, and we don't have various the camel and other packing classes,
right.
And so, right, again, we're about to come up on an example with a 911 operator doing a thing, so I'll just be quiet until then.
Claims that 1 in 3 people who call 911 to report death are actually murderers. No law enforcement officials in the records I've seen have questioned this figure, and many departments repeat it when promoting the training internally. In his thesis, Harpster originally said that his number was 1 in 5, and attributed the figure to an unpublished study by a now dead detective and professor in Washington State. I found nothing to support either statistic. And this is where he's just playing with numbers now, right? He found this one statistic at one time that had no, like his work, had no backup evidence to prove or disprove it or whatever. And then he said, aha, I will use this number because it's scary and people will believe it. No one can check it. It's whatever.
Starts with, as always, right, some negligible kernel of truth, right? Some it rode a bus once with truth. But shows entirely too much jaded, right, to be official security dudes anymore, because you can't believe they're all doing it. Right? You simply goddamn can't.
Right.
Not and do the job well.
Right.
Right. It's similar to the cops and whoever's that ride around with their hand on the gun. Because if you think you're going to get that right, no. An ambush will work.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about the shit you can't do anything about. And some people can't let go of that. Some people are that afraid of their mortality, or in this case, people.
Right.
That they assume 1 in 3 callers to 911 did the thing.
Yeah.
And
they're willing to accept that number on the face without asking,
On the other
hey,
hand,
where'd you get that number? Just out of
if
curiosity.
asked to, figure out what that number is, 1, I assume I'm going to overestimate, and 2, it's gonna not be small.
Yeah.
Right? And probably just, I think what they're getting tangled up with it is, we have taught a number of people the truth of the fact that the first one who gets to the police wins in almost any civil disagreement.
That's true.
Yeah, that's all I had until we get to 911 operators jumping up and down.
Harpster makes himself available day and night to take phone calls from police and prosecutors looking to validate a hunch or strategize for trial. He once hosted a former student from Florida at his lakeside vacation house in Michigan, where he claimed on his Facebook page that they solved a murder. Last year, a detective called him for input while standing over someone's body at a crime scene. Police often email him 911 tapes for consultations. Men and women wailing on the phone as they plead with the dispatcher to save a dead loved one. Sometimes it's a parent holding a dead child. In one case, Harpster listened to an Ohio mother's desperate call for help and then wrote back simply, "Call me, dirty." The mother was not charged. His methods have now surfaced in at least 26 states, where many students embrace him like an oracle. They write in emails and course evaluations that his training is the best they've ever attended. They laud the signs and send Harpster tales of arrests, prosecutions, and convictions that they attribute, at least in part, to his program. A group of North Dakota dispatchers listened to a 911 tape the day after Harpster's class and decided the caller didn't seem to be appropriately shocked or upset. On the phone when he reported a homicide, one jumped up and down shouting, "He's guilty! He did it!"
Me.
Here we go.
911 operators need to work on problem solving and not guess about guilt. Again, my thing of, I want them to take structural engineering courses. I want them to know why we put HVAC units where we do. Because I don't know, right, what I need them to be is the most hyper-trained human being, right? If I could, I'd sit down like ex-special forces kids. I want people who are as adaptable as a radioactive virus.
Right.
To be on the line trying to help people get out of whatever problem they're in.
It's not your job to assign guilt at 911.
Nope.
If you're a 911 operator, your only job is to help that person through whatever crisis they are in right now.
And we should make damn sure to structure it that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we should fire every one of them and have police man their own talks.
Yep.
And because then, right, if it's only for the benefit of police and law enforcement, then first off, police are already supposedly trained in concisely reporting details.
Have the ones that are getting ready for retirement, go man the phones, man. It's so much easier on your back, and
yeah, no, exactly.
You can help people out.
Well, and I don't mind the jaded, right, third of people are the victor, are the perpetrator. I don't mind that level of jaded cop mentality, like grizzled detective motherfucker vibe, working for the 911 caller.
Yeah.
Right? Because, again, assuming they're not trying to get away with their murder, they're just trying to not get killed by the crazy person with a bat in the next room.
Right.
Then, yeah, I want someone who's going to explain, like, okay, you're going to get hit with a bat. That's going to happen. You're going to want to take that on the side, and you're going to want to wrap your arm around it. Now you've got a bat. Well, they don't have a bat. You don't have one either, but most importantly right now, they don't have one.
Yeah.
And that's when they're going to find out you have another hand, and then they're going to be dead. And that's going to be bad, but here's where you're going to stab them. Yeah. But I'd rather that part of the jaded security bit be working for them than what I assume is a young and good, 911 operator who now believes they can attribute guilt.
Yep.
and is now looking at that and thinking about that, and I don't think you can accurately do
your job
remote
when
advice
you're
stuff.
trying to decide, are they guilty? Or like sitting there with the checklist, you know what I mean? Like checking shit off while you're listening to a 911 call, because now you're not focusing on the 911 call. You're not focusing on helping this person. You're focusing on saying, I get to help, catch a murderer.
I'm fighting crime
Yeah.
when
That's not your job.
no, and I
hate to say it, but it's really not your job.
Well, and I worry about the areas where that's not even the goal. Like, how do you get them to downshift out of that? Right? Because getting humans to downshift out of a proactive mental state is nearly fucking impossible. Right? It's one of the big long-term training things of like get people all amped up. Yeah, and then have them do squats and other stuff to control large motor groups while asking them deep intellectual questions that require thought and multi-level thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we're doing that with 911 operators, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But that's just the method. I know that works.
Fair. A police chief in Michigan said Harpster's class paid off immediately after a man called 911 and said he just found his mother and sister dead. He made the mistake of saying, "I need help," the chief explained. A detective in Washington State, Marty Garland, told Harpster that a young mother had called 911 in November 2018 after her infant stopped breathing in his sleep. There was nothing suspicious at the scene, and no detectives were dispatched, Garland wrote. 3 separate pathologists were unable to rule the death a homicide based on the physical evidence. One of those pathologists hired by police changed his conclusion to death by smothering after learning about some of the mother's statements, which were relayed to him by police. But Garland had recently taken Harpster's class and listened to a tape of the call. He noticed problems from literally the first word by the distraught mother. She had said hi to the dispatcher, which is considered a guilty indicator because it's too polite. Garland shared his findings with a supervisor who recategorized the baby's death as suspicious. Harpster also consulted on the case.
Which is insane, because petechial hemorrhaging is from manual strangulation, not smothering.
Yeah, and this is the Jessica Logan case. So again, click in the description, or in the description below is a link to this article. So what I'm talking about right now is that. So go and read that article if you're interested in more details of her case and how it played out and all of that. But
and the chain of events. This can kickstart.
Yep.
Which is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That polygraphs are sort of asked and answered in terms of they're not science. But sure, you can ask someone to take one.
Yeah.
And again, we get to quickly run into questions about third-party neutrality and stuff like that. Because even we know from large studies of it, arbitration, which is in theory neutral, works out 97% of the time in favor of whoever's paying for it.
Right.
Which, yeah, I'm not fucking surprised.
Not even a little bit, no.
Because again, that's where the incentives lie, and humans are incredibly incentivizable creatures. God love us for it half the time.
All right, so I think we're gonna finish this section that we're at, and then we'll stop and we'll finish it tomorrow. But let's just get through this real quick. Prosecutors charged the mother with second-degree murder, which carries a minimum sentence of life in prison. She took a plea deal without admitting guilt that resulted in a manslaughter conviction, and she served about 2 years. Actually, no, this isn't the girl I was thinking about. This is another woman.
Okay.
So, I take back my previous statement because the other woman is still in jail. This woman only served 2 years. So, sorry. This is a different thing. Never have known the truth, Garland wrote to Harpster, if it hadn't been for your book and your excellent training. This theme came up often in the records. Harpster and his acolytes position 911 call analysis in the no man's land between intent and accident. With little physical evidence, they can claim, under the guise of science, to know that a suspect lied on the phone. Once murder is on the table, the accused may feel they have no choice but to plead to manslaughter to avoid a life sentence. They're so basic. Anyway, no, this is just, absolutely insane, and this is why I wanted to do this special report about it. So we're gonna stop here for the night because it's very late. So we're gonna have this, and we'll do another one tomorrow. We were busy during the day today, which is why we ended up recording so late tonight. But we'll finish this up tomorrow. But yeah, we really needed to get this out to you guys because as soon as we heard about this, we knew that this was a big thing and you should know about it. So on that note, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, heart, follow, review, smash that like button on YouTube. Go to BoomerRexTonight News Spaces on Facebook for fun memes and a link to our Patreon. Give us $1. You can find us on YouTube as BoomerRex, or check your favorite podcasting service for BoomerRexTonight. We can be found on over a dozen different platforms, including Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Samsung Podcasts. Hit us up on Twitter at BoomerRexTonight, and if you Google BoomerRexTonight News Spaces, all links will lead you to us. We love you all, and we'll see you tomorrow for part 2 of our special report.
By the internets.